So the first part of Crisis on Infinite Earths is over. Parts 1, 2, and 3 have aired this week, and now that they're over, we won't be getting parts 4 and 5, or part 2, until January 14th, where both Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow will be airing their parts on the exact same night. So I thought that since basically the Infinity War part of Crisis is over, I thought I'd kind of do a video talking about it, what I thought about it, what I liked, what I didn't like, my hopes for the second part when it comes back, and all that sort of stuff. Probably won't give it a rating because I still feel like this, even though it is kind of like one movie and then part 2 will be like another movie, I still feel like it kind of makes more sense to be one big movie, so I don't want to kind of rate it and then be like, well, it should be rated because we've only seen half of it so far. So yeah, there'll be huge spoilers for everything for the first 3 parts of Crisis for this, and maybe possible spoilers for part 4 and 5, because some of the theories I might be talking about might come true, and they might consider that spoilers. But the only thing we've seen about part 2 so far is kind of the one promo that released. But yeah, so getting into it, I'm going to talk about what I liked first of all. Well, there was a lot to love about these first 3 parts. One of the big things I loved was Brandon Routh as Kingdom Come Superman, or as Christopher Reeve Superman, or whatever Superman you want to call him. It was great seeing back. We heard the John Williams theme with him and all that sort of stuff, and it was amazing. He plays the character so well, and I just loved in part 3 when Earth 73, I believe, gets destroyed, and he comes flying back out of the multiverse wave thing, and he lands there and he slams his fist onto the ground of the Wave Rider, and you hear this kind of earthquake, and he gets up and he just goes, he couldn't save them, and then he gives a speech about how hope always shines through the darkness, and that's why there's black in his symbol. It was a perfect scene, and it really did embody the original 1978 movie. It embodied the Superman Returns movie, and in my opinion, it just embodies Superman in general. Like, yeah, Kingdom Come Superman is bummed out, he's been through a lot of loss, but unlike Injustice Superman, this version of Superman didn't lose his way. He stayed hopeful, and despite everything he went through, he was still a paragon of truth. And that's another thing I loved, was that he was a paragon of truth. The other paragons that I really agreed with was Kara as hope, was Barry as love, Jean as honor, and to a much lesser degree, I agreed with Sarah as destiny. I don't know if I completely agree with it. Plus, I don't know if Destiny should really be a paragon, but I thought I was fine with her being a paragon. But the ones that I really agreed with was Brandon Routh Superman, Kara, Barry, and Jean. It's just great to see Jean get a lot to do. Earth 90 Flash was another huge highlight, seeing him come back. I do have a few issues with him only kind of coming back for the limited time, but what we saw of him was great. The fact that they brought back the Danny Elfman theme, the fact that they even showed clips from that TV show to kind of parallel the sacrifice he's about to make. And then we also saw the iconic, it jumped out of the comic onto the screen, the iconic little panel where we see the Flash logo, kind of just the one thing that's left of the Flash suit is just lying there on the ground. I like to believe that version of 90 Flash ended up going back in time and giving himself the lightning strike that makes him become the Flash, because that's what happened in the comics. When Barry Allen, the normal Barry Allen, he does that sacrifice that 90s Barry Allen did, and he ends up going back in time and being the lightning bolt that struck him and gave him his powers. So it'd be cool if that's what happened with that Barry. Black Lightning was also a big highlight. It was great seeing him, and I was very surprised at the amount of things they brought over from the Black Lightning TV show. Like, he gives the speech about this is your life, what are you going to do with it, how are you going to live it. That was amazing. That's something that we hear all the time in Black Lightning, and to hear it on the Flash episode was so cool. Jefferson learning about the fact that his Earth is gone, that Jennifer and Nyssa, Lynn are all dead, and then for him to just kind of be like, okay, the multiverse needs me, I can't think about this now, and he just kind of gets in the mindset of doing it. Plus Barry and Jefferson, they were a great duo. The conversation they had about their fathers towards the end of part 3 was brilliant, and just seeing him standing there among the other characters was great. I also love where he kind of brought up that Superman is a comic book on his Earth, and he didn't realize that they were real. That's kind of amazing. I was a little bit kind of iffy on how they didn't actually say what Earth Jefferson is from. Like, even in his own episode of the TV show that tied into Crisis, they didn't talk about what Earth Jefferson is on at all. They showed different Earths in the episode Black Lightning, and they showed an Earth 1 and an Earth 2 with Jennifer, with 2 versions of Jennifer. I'm not actually sure if they are the proper Earth 1 and Earth 2. I think it's a lot like what Harry described to us back in season 2 of The Flash, or it might have been season 3, where like everybody was calling his Earth Earth 2, and he was like, you know, on my Earth, we're Earth 1. I think that that's kind of the same thing in Black Lightning, whereas because they don't have a map yet, they consider themselves Earth 1, and the Earths around them are in Earth 2, 3, 4, for example, whereas their actual definitions could be Earth 700 or something. Lucifer's cameo was also brilliant. That was something that leaked a while back, like about 2 months ago. We got the leaks that Tom Ellis was spotted on set for Crisis. That's something I wasn't too happy that I was spoiled by. A certain paparazzi person spoiled it, leaked it, and because he leaked it in such a loud fashion, it ended up getting to a lot of the news outlets, and they started running it as news, which meant that it was kind of hard to avoid it. And yeah, there's some paparazzi out there who just get kicks out of spoiling shows like this for people, which kind of sucks. But it was disappointing that got spoiled, but his cameo was still amazing. The second we saw Earth 666, I knew what it was. They even put in a little Watchmen logo there in the corner of the screen. We saw the Earth 66 pop up, Earth 666, sorry, and so that kind of like is like, oh, this might be the Vertigo Earth, where all the Vertigo properties kind of exist, which is interesting enough. Plus, he played the character great, and he even used the "What You Desire" line on Mia, which I thought was brilliant. The Birds of Prey cameo was also really nice to see. I've only seen that show once, and I'm not a big fan of it. It's a little bit of a weird show, but it was still cool to see Ashley Scott as Huntress back, and we even got a voiceover from I can't remember the actress' name, but the person who plays Oracle, and I'm pretty sure that was new voiceover, because the actress was posting on Twitter about how she was so happy to kind of be back in the role and whatnot. So that was really cool, and they were on Earth 203, I think, and it was even New Gotham, so that was great. And I also have to bring up the Smallville cameo with Tom Welling. Now, I know that I've been kind of vocal about saying that I really, really, really was hoping that he would be in a big role, that it wouldn't just be a one and done kind of scene. But after seeing the scene, I gotta say I'm alright with it. It was a perfect ending for Clark Kent. He gave up his powers, he has daughters, he's living his best life with Lois in the Smallville campfire. That has to be like at least a decade after he becomes Superman in the show, so like that would have to be like, I want to say Smallville is a little bit further ahead in the timeline than the Arrowverse shows, because like Smallville ended in 2011, then we got a jump 2 years into the future to see him in 2013 it would have been as Superman, but then we also at some point in Smallville season 10, I think it was episode 4 of season 10, which was the 200th episode, we saw a jump 8 years into the future, which would have been like that would have been 2019. And he did not look near as old as he looks in this. Like, he's got some grey hair and stuff like this, and he still looked pretty young 8 years into the future. So I want to say that this is like Smallville actually takes place maybe 10 years after the Arrowverse in terms of timeline stuff, because we've already kind of went over the fact, especially with Kevin Conroy's Batman, that some of the Earths take place more in the future than in the past. Like, they said Kevin Conroy's Batman is the Bat of the future, so that would mean that Earth 99 takes place further ahead in the timeline than the other ones. The same with Lucifer's Earth. His Earth takes place 5 years before the Lucifer TV show even starts, which would mean that his Earth is actually kind of behind the Arrowverse timeline, and I don't think that means that, oh, Lucifer's show takes place after Crisis. I think it just kind of means that the Earths, they're at different points in time. And then once all the Earths form together, or if they do form together, then everything will kind of be on the same page. But yeah, it was great to see him. They even did Blake Neely, man. He's such an underrated composer. The amount of themes he was able to bring in and weave into this and make them feel natural. Like, this is something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is only just now getting around to doing, which is bringing in themes from other characters' movies and using them in the big team-up movies. But Blake Neely does such a good job at weaving the themes together. Like besides the Save Me, you know, the staple of Smallville, the actual OST for Smallville isn't very memorable. There's a little kind of, you'd know it if you heard it, but it's not something that kind of jumps out at you. But Blake Neely somehow was able to weave parts of that into this episode. You could hear the little kind of bits that they would play in Smallville season 9 and 10, like just the tiny little tones, and it's amazing that he was able to do that. And especially when we were doing the little pan across the newspaper articles of Superman that Lois Lane has written in Smallville, and we finally just do the pan shot to see Clark Kent there chopping wood. There's just little bits of the Smallville soundtrack in there that I'm astonished he was able to do. And he brought in the Danny Elfman theme, for Flash and for the Batman movie, the original Batman 66 theme, even the Titans theme was in part 1 in a little way when we finally saw the Earth. But yeah, I thought that was a perfect way to end his character. I was not expecting the big reveal that John Cryer's Lex Luthor was going to be there to kill him. That was probably the big surprise of episode 2 for me, was seeing John Cryer's Lex there, and, he tries to punch Clark, and Clark is just trying to grab his fist, and it's like, oh, still stronger. It was just a brilliant scene. Like, yes, I would love to see him return in parts 4 and 5, but if this is all we got, I'm not going to be too annoyed about it. I'm not going to be annoyed at all about it. I thought it was a pretty perfect way to end his story. It's a nice way to end his story. Oliver in part 1 was something that I did like a lot. I thought that his character was pretty good in part 1, especially when he's kind of confronting the Monitor a lot like he did in Elseworlds, where he kind of just yells at him. A lot of that was really enjoyable. But in retrospect of what comes in part 2 and 3, Oliver's story in part 1 has been brought down a lot for me, so I'm going to leave that into the things that I disliked, unfortunately. I thought that Kara has had a lot to do, which was good, especially in part 1 of which is the Supergirl episode, would make sense, but her and Kate have honestly felt like they've been more, the focus has been more on them than it has been on Barry and Oliver. I'm fine with Kara getting a lot of focus. She's one of the Trinity. I don't know why I'm doing all my T's today. She's one of the Trinity, but yeah, so it makes sense that she's getting a lot to do, and I want her to get a lot to do. Kate, however, I'm a little bit like, why is she getting a lot to do? Like, she's going to be in the focus of crossovers after this one once Arrow's done, because they'll be taking the place of Arrow pretty much. So I don't know why they're kind of forcing Kate to get so much focus this crossover. I liked some of Kevin Conroy's stuff. His dialogue was very well written, I'll give them that. And plus, Kevin Conroy just plays the character amazingly. But their decision to use the Dark Knight Returns Batman as the first Batman we meet in the Arrowverse was a little bit iffy for me. I don't want to say I hated it, because it was still very enjoyable in its own right. It's just thinking back on it, I wish they would have shown us an actual proper Bruce Wayne or an actual proper Batman before we get the Dark Knight Returns Batman. But yeah, so there was so much love. The ending of part 3 was obviously phenomenal. It's an Infinity War level ending where it's something you completely don't expect, and I love the part where Pariah sends the Paragons away, and then we get Clark from Earth 38, we get Iris, and we get Black Lightning. Like, they're gonna fight you to their very last breath, any means necessary, and then they'll stand. Even Ralph is just standing there. He knows he's about to die, but he's standing there ready to go anyway. That was amazing. And Anti-Monitor looks great as well. But yeah, so I guess I'll kind of jump into the things I didn't like. So while it might sound like I'm being overly negative, I'm not. I'm really enjoying the crossover. There just is quite a few things that I wish they would do differently, or I wish that they didn't do at all. One of the big things, the biggest thing for me, is Oliver's story. So it appeared in episode 1 that they were getting ready to do something with his death. That either that wasn't his death, or they were planning something else for it. There were so many hints towards that. The fact that Star City 2046 Oliver came out of nowhere. He literally just... It was a side quest to a character we hadn't seen in 4 years. And I assumed that was more than a side quest. I assumed that was them setting up for something. Because it was such a prevalent part of part 1 that I was like, okay, it has to be something leading to something, but it wasn't. It was just there as a side quest. Then Oliver's story, where he was sacrificing himself to save 1 billion people on Earth 38 in itself, is a very, very, very good thing to do. But the way they did the sacrifice left a lot to be desired. Now, him dropping the bow and running at the Shadow Demons was amazing. That was a proper Green Arrow scene. And I thought that was an amazing way to end part 1, but I also didn't think Oliver actually died. I also thought that this was either a different Oliver, or it was something, or he was taken before he died. I thought that was a great scene without knowing that it was Oliver's death scene. But the fact that they cut away from that scene, the fact that they didn't actually show Oliver's final stand, made me think that, oh, okay, so something is happening there in that scene. Something happened between him dropping the bow and running the Shadow Demons and when he appears on Earth 1 again. Either he was taken by the Monitor, either they switched him out with a different Oliver. Something was happening. But no, they just didn't show his final stand. This is Oliver Queen, this is the Green Arrow, the person who started this universe. If he's having a final stand, we as viewers need to see it. Them cutting away gives us the impression that something happens there, when in reality, nothing did happen. They just probably either didn't have the time or the budget to actually show Oliver fight. And if that was the case, they shouldn't have done that scene at all. As great as it was, they shouldn't have done that scene. And then this whole thing felt like it felt like a couple things. It felt like, one, budget or time. Two, they just wanted a shock thing to end part one. Or three, they needed a reason for Stephen Amell not to be too present in the rest of the crossover. And this is very obvious in part 2 and 3, where Oliver gets... I don't think he gets a single line in part 2, because they basically use a stunt double for most of that episode for him to put him in the Lazarus pit, and then the one time where he comes back from the Lazarus pit is like his one scene in that episode, and he's crazy. And that's like a 5-second scene. Then we get him again in Purgatory in part 3, where Diggle, Mia, and John go to find his soul. And even there, he gets like maybe half a minute of lines. And that storyline itself felt very rushed. Oliver is brought back to himself once he sees Diggle for like 5 seconds. He's there about to snap John Constantine's throat. And then Diggle just goes, "Oliver, it's me." And Oliver just goes, "John." And then just lets Constantine go. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then the Spectre just showing up out of nowhere also felt like a super rushed plotline that just shouldn't... I'm fine with Oliver becoming the Spectre. I think that's a really cool plotline, but that shouldn't be happening halfway through Crisis. That shouldn't be taking up all of the screen time. That should be happening either at the very end of Crisis, like right at the end, or it shouldn't be happening at all till Arrow's final. Because of this happening, we're probably not going to see any big scenes with Oliver for the rest of the crossover. Maybe towards the very end we'll see him as the Spectre fighting the Anti-Monitor or something, but we're probably not going to see anything like that then. We're probably not going to see a Green Arrow scene for the rest of the crossover, which is really frustrating. He's probably not going to have a big fight scene with the rest of the heroes, which is also going to be super annoying. This whole situation with Oliver is probably the biggest thing I'm annoyed about with the crossover. Probably my biggest complaint. The other things are kind of just, I guess you could say they're more nitpicks than problems with it. Oliver is just the big thing that I feel has left a lot to be desired. I guess Barry as well is something that I feel should have been given a lot more. Now, I'm not saying he's been underutilized, because he hasn't. He got a lot to do in part 3, but he hasn't gotten near as much to do in the crossover as Kara and Kate. Same goes for Oliver. He hasn't gotten near as much to do as Kara and Kate, which is weird, because this Crisis is supposed to be about Oliver and Barry, not Kara and Kate. Like, Kara should still have a lot to do, but it feels like Barry and Oliver should be more prevalent than them. Now Barry will probably get a lot to do in part 4 and 5, maybe even actually vanish, but at the moment it definitely feels like he's an afterthought in a lot of the episodes. He definitely was in part 1 and 2. It was just finally in part 3 he started to come into his own. I was also a little bit disappointed with the lack of Blacklining and Earth 90 Flash. Like, while Earth 90 Flash's sacrifice scene was great, I feel like we should have gotten something at some point between Elseworlds and now to show where he's at, or to show what he's up to kind of just be like, oh yeah, after Elseworlds, Anti-Monitor took him, is a little bit rushed. And I feel like that's kind of a problem with a lot of this crossover, is that a lot of the stuff they're doing could easily have been put into episodes of the other shows this season to lead up to this, so that it feels a lot less rushed, a lot less like they're throwing random elements in as fast as they can. Like having Earth 90 Flash appear early on this season of Flash, showing what he's up to, and then maybe getting one of the after credit scenes be like Anti-Monitor taking him. That would have cleared up a lot of the issues with his character. And Ryan Choi, who ended up being a Paragon of Humanity. That is one of the 2 Paragons, I want to say, that I don't agree with. And that's because he's a character we've never met before. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of characters in the Arrowverse at this point, all of them established, and for some reason they decided to choose a completely new character to use as one of the Paragons, and that doesn't make sense to me. Now, this could have been cleared up as well by having Ryan appear a couple episodes in Flash this season, setting up his character, setting up him knowing these heroes, so that we don't have to do we don't have to devote some of an episode going to find him. But at the same time, I just feel like it should have been a character we've already met in the Arrowverse. There's so many characters they could choose from, and like, if they wanted a human character, there's still so many non-powered characters they could choose, but they didn't. Kate, I also don't really agree with as Courage, mainly just because we haven't really seen a lot to do with her character yet. We don't really know a lot of depth into her. Like, Batwoman, the show was pretty great, and Ruby Rose is playing a fine Kate Kane. I just feel like there should be a little bit more there to show us why she is the Paragon of Courage, and this leads into the Kevin Conroy Bruce Wayne stuff. I just feel like they shouldn't be using Dark Knight Returns as the very first Bruce Wayne we meet in the Arrowverse. If we'd met a couple of Bruce Waynes already, and then, or even just one Bruce Wayne already, and then we see this Bruce Wayne in the crossover, I'd be fine with that, but they didn't exactly do that, so it's a little bit iffy. But that's just kind of my main issues with it. I'm not big on the whole Lex Luthor taking the place of Brandon Routh's Superman, but at the same time, that's such a cool Lex Luthor move. Like, it's such a thing that Lex would do that I'm not too annoyed about it, because, like, of course Lex Luthor would just cross Superman out and write Lex Luthor. Of course, out of the 7 Paragons, he would pick Superman as the one to get rid of, even though Superman's probably the one there who could save them the most. And he's like, no, I don't care if the multiverse gets destroyed as long as I one-up Superman. Like, that's something that's really cool. I guess Harbinger as well. Lila and Pariah have been a little bit of an afterthought in this, and I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, if you've read the Crisis comics, you won't have such a problem with this, and that's fine. Like, I have read the comics twice. I think I've read Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I still feel like Harbinger and Pariah need a lot more explanation. Not even just for me, because I know the whole story of Pariah, I know the whole story of Harbinger, but for people who are only watching the shows, I can see those characters being very confusing, of like, why are they just popping in and out every now and then, and why is there not really an explanation for them, and whatnot. That's something I feel like definitely could have been cleared up. The thing is, my Oliver and Barry complaints can definitely be cleaned up in part 4 and 5, depending on how those two characters are handled. Same, I suppose, goes for the whole they're less prominent than Kara and Kate. That could be cleared up in part 4 and 5. The Legends also haven't gotten too much to do. Well, kind of nothing at all. They basically, besides Sarah and Ray, they haven't been in the crossover at all. Like, I know we have a version of Mick, but I don't even know why they chose to do a different version of Mick. He's identical character-wise to our version of Mick. Wouldn't it just been handier to have that Mick show up? I don't know. There's some very weird writing reasons that I can't get my head around, but overall, yeah, that's kind of all my complaints, kind of all my positives. I still am very excited for part 4 and 5, despite my issues with the crossover. I still think it's very enjoyable. I don't think that it's better than Elseworlds or Crisis on Earth X just yet. Maybe parts 4 and 5 will push it over that line, but at the moment I feel like both of those crossovers were paced better. They had better highs. I don't even know if they had worse lows. I don't think they did. I think Crisis on Earth Earth so far has had worse lows. But, yeah, that's kind of all my thoughts on it. I really hope we get a big battle scene in the final part with as many heroes as possible. I hope we see some more cool moments. I know they're shooting a lot of cameos over the Christmas break to put into parts 4 and 5, and so it'll be interesting to see what we get there. Maybe whenever they're restoring an Earth, we'll see a bunch of cameos from different shows and whatnot. That'd be interesting. But yeah. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe, and all of that, and I hope you have an awesome day.